Welcome, everyone. We'll call to order the Monday, September 25th meeting of the City Council Economic Development Committee. Our first order of business is to consider approval of the minutes of November 29th, 2022. Have we had a chance to review the minutes? Any corrections or changes? I'd entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved.
Second.
Any other discussion? All those in favor of approval of the minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. None opposed? All right, the minutes are approved. The next item is to consider the fiscal year 2025 budget recommendations to the full City Council for our community development assistance funding for business development organizations. And we have two up for consideration: the Entrepreneurial Development Center and the Multicultural Development Center of Iowa. I don't know, Rachel, do you have any introduction for us?
I'll just provide a quick reminder, since we haven't met in a year, that typically we have provided support to both these business support and arts and culture organizations. Each year they're invited to come and present to the Council Economic Development Committee and submit their funding requests. So just to set the stage, I wanted to note that almost all of the organizations had expressed a need for increased funding this year. And I had communicated back to the organizations that we do expect another status quo budget year, just due to all of the financial uncertainties that you're all very familiar with. As you know, we anticipate a larger drop in that rollback rate this year, so we anticipate we may see a third straight year of declining taxable values. We still need to make up for that general levy capacity we lost through the last round of property tax reform, and then we know that the state legislature is interested in another round of property tax reform this session. So for those reasons, although we are so appreciative of all that these organizations bring to our community, the staff recommendation that you did see in your memo was for stable funding levels. I shared that with the organizations, but I also encouraged them to be honest and candid in their need and requests. So just in reviewing last year's minutes, it looked like, you guys had waited until, or you had made funding recommendations after each organization had presented. You're welcome to do that again, or you can wait until the very end, however you want to handle it. I would still recommend just handling those business support and arts and cultural organizations separately. So that's all I have. Otherwise, if you have no conversation, we can walk up Beth Meyer, who's the Vice President of Marketing with the Entrepreneurial Development Center.
And Michelle, I brought Michelle Higgins with me. She's with Augment. She is one of our current clients here from Iowa City. I'm Beth Meyer. I think I know most of you, or I've met most of you. I used to be with the Iowa City Area Business Partnership for about 3.5 years. Prior to almost a year ago, I joined EDC. And when I was with the business partnership, I guess I should call it Greater Iowa City now, because that's become official, and that's exciting. But when I was there, I think for me, I really had a front row seat in through the pandemic, working with small businesses in this area in Iowa City and Johnson County, and kind of seeing the struggles that a lot of them have just throughout, especially during the pandemic, but throughout their time and starting a new business and really keeping that business running. So for me, it was always a really fun opportunity and sometimes challenging opportunity in working with the local businesses here. But as I mentioned, I came on with the Entrepreneurial Development Center in Cedar Rapids about a year ago, and in that time, I think for me, it's been as much of a learning experience as it has been really interesting. And I had no idea really the work that goes into starting a business, working with entrepreneurs, and whether it's a true startup business, as Michelle's is, or businesses that have been around 10, 15, even 40 years. So we work with businesses kind of across the breadth of startup to what we call kind of midterm or early stage to mature businesses. And so whether they're a true entrepreneur or a business owner that's just looking to scale. And we only work with Iowa-based businesses that do interstate commerce. So Kurt Nelson is our CEO and president, and he sends his regrets for not being here. His daughter got married this weekend in Colorado, so I think he's on his way back today. And so I wanted to just introduce Michelle Higgins again with Augment. We recently started working with Michelle earlier this summer, and I think most of you know who we are and what we do, but I thought it's always nice to get a different perspective and have our clients kind of tell their story as it relates to EDC. So, Michelle?
Yeah, thanks, Beth. So Michelle Higgins, I'm an MD, PhD. While I was in medical school, I had an idea for a company, a business making surgical simulators. So I am now a resident in ear, nose, throat surgery at UIHC at the University Hospital. And I still feel that need to be able to practice a surgery ahead of operating on a patient. So when I was here in Iowa City, I was looking around for some help to launch the business. And fortunately, found the EDC. And I can't stress enough how important it was for me to be able to have a group who was looking to support startups, entrepreneurs in all stages at any point of a business idea, of launch, of, how do I market, how do I make a sticker? And so the EDC has helped in so many ways. So I brought an idea and talked with Kurt and the staff, Bree, kind of was able to have space to lay out who I am and what my vision is and mission. And then work on product development together, work on marketing together. I have funding to send simulators to 450 simulators to 13 sites. So this is an example of a temporal bone, which is, surrounding the ear, so you can practice ear surgeries with this 3D printed model. So I developed the product, but I wanted to get it out there. And the EDC was instrumental in being able to do that. So everything from thinking about how to ship the product, how to market the product, put some information in. Bree designed this label. Beth helped, with all aspects of how to present the company and the product. And then Kurt has been invaluable in, talking with me, coaching and advising and everything from, just like, who are you? Where do you want to go with this? To, I competed in the Iowa John Papajohn Venture Entrepreneurial Innovation Pitch Competition. It's a long name that they've given it, but it was a statewide competition, and I felt confident going to that because of the support that the EDC gave me. So wholeheartedly, love what they're doing, and am getting, I think, quite a bit more value from them than they probably get from me.
No.
But, looking to grow the business in Iowa and having the team around me is critical. Thank you.
So I think Michelle is an example of, just why we exist as we're celebrating our 20th anniversary this month in September. And so we're really trying to tell our story a little bit more. We've developed a new website. We're putting together a video series that really kind of focuses more on our clients again than it does on us. But I think, your support is so important to us as it relates to Iowa City in particular. I know that Kurt provided a report to you earlier, kind of outlines currently who we're working with in Iowa City. At any one given time, we have about 35 or 36 active clients throughout the state. We tend to get more clients, obviously, in Iowa City and Cedar Rapids in the corridor area because of our location. But as Michelle mentioned, we work very closely with JPEC and the Venture School here. UIHC, we get referrals, oftentimes. And we're very plugged into the ecosystem, of course, with the state Innoventure competitions and the Iowa Economic Development Authority we work very closely with. So most of our businesses come to us from referrals. I think maybe Kurt was on a judge on the pitch competition with JPEC, which he does every year, and I think that's how we connected with Michelle. But a lot of times we work closely with NUBO and ISA and Cedar Rapids and the Economic Development Group here, Greater Iowa City, I should say. And so, we're always looking to find companies that kind of fit our model. Again, Iowa-based, interstate commerce. We don't typically work with restaurants or small retail organizations or businesses, but those that do, we are looking to help them scale and scale rather quickly. They have to have that potential. I would say an average engagement with any one business is between 5 and 7 years. Sometimes the startups take quite a bit longer just to obviously launch and get the product out into the market or the service. So I think what we do is really important. The impact that we make is substantial. Those numbers are outlined in the report that's just for Iowa City. But I think, again, in the year that I've been there, it's really been a fun learning experience. And I think what makes us different is just kind of that one-on-one, individualized hand-holding, as we sometimes like to call it, but just kind of digging in and getting to know the business owner or the entrepreneur and finding a way to figure out how we can help them. If we can't help them ourselves, we have probably 25 to 30 strategic partners throughout the state, whether it's attorneys, accounting, different types of organizations that we partner with that also step in and can be there for our clients. So I think most of you know who we are and what we do just from being here last year. But any questions, or is there anything I can help answer?
Hi, I'm Megan Alter. It's nice to meet you.
Yes, you too.
And what an amazing product. It's very exciting. One of the questions that I have, and maybe it's going to end up, as is usual with me, being a couple of parts, but last year, one of the things that Kurt rightfully was really proud of was sort of the way in which, there might be hand-holding, but through this deep network that the company has, to be able to get people sort of into the network, right, as that's a really, really important part of this. And I guess I wanted to know, in terms of your strategic partners, and then also in terms of your active clients, you mentioned 35 to 36 active, how many of them are people of color, are engaged with multiculturalism? I love that we have a woman entrepreneur. I'll just be very upfront. One of the things that I'm very interested in is not having a specific, this is forward thinking, but not having one economic development for people of color and one that is for sort of the more traditional white Iowan. And I would love to see this very well-established group sort of move towards reaching out for diversity. And I will admit that one of the things I remember Kurt talking about last year is like, well, we work with the people that we really see some potential in, but oftentimes that traditional networking model excludes or simply is not aware of all of the potential that is in a community or throughout the state. So can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, I think, Megan, that's a great question. I can't give you an exact number. We have several early startup entrepreneurs who are in the Black community or the BIPOC community. Much like when I was with the business partnership here, diversity is really kind of at the forefront of what we were doing then and what we're seeing now. More and more women, I look at the list of businesses on here, I think all but 2 are women-owned or women-led businesses. So that's certainly becoming more common. One of the things that we've talked about, to your point, within our organization is increasing our capacity to go out and find businesses that really fit that. As you mentioned, typically people are coming to us and being referred to us. I think through NUBO and through the Cedar Rapids Metro Economic Alliance, we're getting more and more referrals for businesses that are new to the market, are new to the entrepreneurial ecosystem, and and that fit the diversity profile. And so we are aware of that. We are trying to do more towards that end. And I think that's one of the things as we go out into our capital campaign in 2024 that we'll really be speaking to as well, because I think that's an important part of this ecosystem. for us, it's an important part of what we're doing for the next 20 years for, the legacy of the organization as well.
Thank you.
Any other, excuse me, any other questions for EDC? Rachel, I have a question as far as the little introduction that you provided to us and the uncertainty of the rollback and our capacity to raise revenue. Do we know the timing of when that portion of it, as far as the setting of the rollback, will be determined?
Well, typically we don't find out till maybe November.
Okay.
So I think as you discuss and consider today, there's obviously flexibility in the entire budget process moving forward. So, we have different options depending on how you want to handle today's request.
Okay. Great. Thank you.
Any questions about the actual ask letter that Kurt provided? Has everybody had a chance to look at that? Okay, I just wanted to make sure that we are requesting, of course, the same that we requested previously, and really appreciate the city of Iowa City and what they're doing here locally. And I live here, and so I'm kind of always joking with Kurt that we need to just open an office. I could be the office down here and just be here instead of driving to Cedar Rapids. So really appreciate it. Appreciate your support as well. And if there's any opportunity to get engaged, if you know of small businesses that we could certainly talk to. We don't turn anyone away. We talk to everyone. We bring them through our doors, and then we kind of go from there and see whether or not they want to continue to work with us, and we'll help them going forward.
Thank you,
Thank
Beth.
you. Thank you, Rachel.
Thank you. So for the committee members, shall we listen to both presentations and then
I like that.
determine?
Yeah,
Okay,
please.
great. Tracy.
Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
Nice to see you all again. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Tracy John Sargent. I am the founder and executive director of the Multicultural Development Center of Iowa. I apologize, that's a mouthful, but we started out 6 years ago now, trying to focus on improving racial diversity in STEM. As we start to look through that racial equity lens, we realize that there's a lot more that we could do to support our community members of color, and we branched out into providing economic development support. We've been very successful in providing direct business support to more than 60 businesses here in our community now over the last 2 years. So we're very proud of what we've done. Obviously, we continue to have challenges like any small organization does, funding being one of them, which is why we are here today to obviously encourage you to support our request for additional support. I can appreciate the current climate with funding and budgeting. I know it's a huge challenge for the city, but we wanted to make our case that there's a lot that we can do with just a little bit more. We're 100% volunteer-led, so none of our operating expenses are consumed for staff. That comes with its own challenges, obviously, in terms of consistency and being able to be somewhat predictable, but we find a way to make that work, and luckily most of our clients operate full transparency. We know where they're at, they know where we're at, and they offer a lot of grace and forgiveness when we're unable to meet some of those demands, so that's always helpful. I did my best to put together an impact report. I wanted to share with you what we've done. We're certainly not marketing professionals, and we don't outsource or spend money on those things. So everything we do is in-house. But we wanted to obviously highlight some of the things we've been able to do, capture some of what we think are fairly significant milestones, one of them being our ability to provide microfinancing to small businesses, which is a real challenge. It's a major barrier for most of them. And then I wanted to share a success story. The nature of what we do, it's not one and done. They don't complete our program and then, we abandon them. So we're still providing support to individuals that were part of our first cohort, which again makes it a little bit difficult to predict what the need is going to be when and, they pop up, you kind of give them what they need, or what you think they need, and they go off, and they may come back, months later or, a year later and say, hey, I've done that thing now, or that didn't work out the way that I had hoped. Part of our goal is to try to increase capacity for our business coaching. We try to connect them with individuals that can provide that kind of support, so that when things come up, that we're not waiting for them to come back to us to tell us that something happened. We can kind of, anticipate some of those challenges and some of those needs. Yeah, we're trying to do what we can. I do think that part of our value as an organization is that we're, if I had to throw a percentage on it, I think something like 85-90% led by people of color. And so what we've gotten in terms of direct feedback from our participants is how they appreciate being able to work with people that look like them. They have a higher degree of confidence. There's some shared lived experience, or at least shared cultural experience, that they feel more comfortable working with those individuals that look like them. And there's some, awareness that you may or may not have, depending on what your cultural background is. So that's really what we're trying to accomplish moving forward. We're, constantly looking at all opportunities to secure funding in any way that we can. It's very difficult in the nonprofit space, but we do our best to keep our costs down. A huge chunk, most of what we bring in terms of revenue, I hate using that, it sounds very commercial and for-profit like, but what we bring in terms of revenue goes right back out to the businesses that we support, mostly through technical assistance grants, things that we provide in terms of expenses that we cover, marketing, their website and expenses like that. We're just trying to reduce the burden for as many of them as possible and provide as much of that direct support as we can. So I think I captured most of it in my impact report. I don't know if there's questions. I'll try to keep it as brief as I can this morning. I know you have a lot of work to do today.
Questions?
I do, and I apologize if this is in the report. I'm
Yeah, no worries.
trying to pull it up. But you mentioned, I remember last year you were talking about how really the follow-up and the coaching was falling to you. I mean, this was, you were doing the work of several, right? And you mentioned that you have, been focusing on increasing capacity in that way. Can you talk a little bit more about that? Have you been able to find some people who can act in that regard to help the lift?
I may not look like it. I'm less tired than I normally am because I have found ways to scale. So one of the things that I'm always looking for is when people talk about, hey, how can we partner with, MDC Iowa? That's a very common thing for them to say. They like the work that we're doing. They recognize the need to support the demographics that we serve. And I have gotten better at pushing back on them and saying, well, what can you do to partner with us rather than us partnering, with you? And so we've been able to find that one key resource in a business coach. She's actually technically contracted through Iowa Community Capital, and that's the organization that we do our microloans through. So they're the ultimate underwriter for the small dollar loans, the credit builder loans, and our microloans. And so they actually pay her fee, her salary, if you will, to be a business coach. And then we recently added an individual to our board. His name is Mitchell Vaughn. He's out of the Cedar Rapids area, and he has an entrepreneurial background and has taken on the role of being a business coach as well. And then another board member who does not live in the state is actually a deputy county administrator, has taken on, I would still call it a business coaching role, but he's focused on the strategic doing. He actually knows Ed, who created that framework, and he's been a practitioner for a long time. And then there are some more, I'm going to call them more mentors that are industry specific that have stepped up and said, hey, we can support some of these individuals. And so we still, MDC Iowa still covers kind of that overarching business coach responsibility, but we're leveraging more and more of the support.
Thank you, especially for repeating yourself, since Eric
Yeah.
finally was able to pull that chunk up.
Yeah, I was going to go through that, but yeah, I mean, one of the biggest things that we're trying to leverage more and more of, and I have a meeting on Friday with the university, is, just trying to identify what are those other resources, but we're very sensitive to individuals that want to come in and partner and make those connections, and then they try to kind of circumvent the relationship that we've built with those individuals. We're the ones that have built the trust. You know, we're there for them. A lot of them, if I march them in here, would say that MDC Iowa has shown up when other people have not, and so it seems maybe unauthentic to bring in partners who were not that interested in working with them before, and now that, you know, maybe it's more popular or trending or checks a box, you know, so we're a little sensitive to who we engage and what we might do in terms of partnerships and how much we relinquish in terms of control.
Can you speak just a little bit about the becoming a CDFI
Oh,
and
yeah.
kind of how you came to that decision and how you feel that that's a need you're
Yeah.
poised to meet?
Thank you. That's a great question, and I would love to talk at length about that. But I think just from when we look at equity or inequity, rather, we know that there are no CDFIs that are run by people of color. And again, I think there's a tremendous value in having organizations that are led by the people that they serve. You know, Tom Banta used to say that, you know, the people that are, I think, the most qualified to solve a problem are the ones that are closest to the problem. And I think that we understand that. And so it was, my board had agreed that that's something that we would be willing to take on. We were already working with people to identify the barriers, and most of them are around access to funding. The relationship we have with Iowa Community Capital is fine, but they have a local loan committee that reviews all of the loans, and we've done 6 so far, and I can tell you that 90% of those they've said no to. Now, the benefit of being an affiliate is that we have the right to veto that and say, no, we are going to do this loan. The challenge is that we then incur 100% of the loan loss reserve. So I think our main goal or our main driver in wanting to be a CDFI is so that we can be the ones that are ultimately able to make those decisions without having to go through this affiliate type of relationship where there's some other loan committee that is not, you know, close to our community, is not close to these individuals, that really just is taking the same traditional approach to looking at underwriting, and they're not modifying, you know, their behavior. And so we thought that this was a viable solution. CDFI has a tremendous amount of funding. I know they've revamped their application process and some of those requirements, but we've been intermittently working with Jason Friedman, who's obviously local to Iowa City, but nationally does a lot of consulting to help people start CDFIs, and he thinks that we're in a great position to provide that level of service. If and when we apply and we get approved, there's a lot of funding that we can tap into that would really give us the ability to accelerate and increase that capacity. It's something like $300,000 that we would be able to receive and tap into, which would help us, you know, from a staffing perspective. But this has been a fun exercise, little science experiment, if you will, where we're building out processes and developing tools and looking at the framework that a lot of other organizations are utilizing to provide their microfinancing. And so we're really creating a pretty solid foundation without having to go through that whole lengthy process of becoming a CDFI. But one of the things that Jason encouraged us to do is to get, you know, a dozen or so loans and be able to show that we can effectively administer and manage those over, you know, 18 months. And so that's kind of where that milestone came from. Step one is you got to get a loan. And so we went from 0 to like 5 or 6 loans within the first 6 months, which to me kind of validated that there is a legitimate need. And this is just in Iowa City. Mm-hmm. We obviously are the Johnson County affiliate for Iowa Community Capital, so we can do loans for anyone in Johnson County. We're realizing there's significant gaps, and this is a CDFI that gets hundreds of thousands of dollars every year from the SBA, and we don't see them putting any real effort into supporting historically disadvantaged Iowans. So if they're not going to do it and they're the only funding CDFI, then I think typically that falls to us to do those things. And so we really want to make sure that we lean into that as much as possible. So we're looking at every and any opportunity to do some funding for individuals. A lot of times that means we're the ones taking on, that risk. But again, this wouldn't happen if it wasn't for the city, because the city provided a good chunk of that initial loan loss reserve that gives us the loan authority to do about $400,000 in loans. Did I answer that?
Yeah,
All right,
you
perfect.
did. Thank you. Any other questions for MDC Iowa? Oh, okay.
Awesome, thank
Thank
you.
you so much. All right, so for the committee members, shall we take these now? So just as a reminder, we have a request from the EDC for $25,000, which is the same amount that they requested last year, and that is also staff's recommendation. MDC Iowa has a request for $50,000, which is an increase from the award last year of $25,000, and staff is recommending going with the same amount of funding as last year, which is $25,000. So any thoughts?
Hard.
Yeah.
It's just difficult, given what we have to manage in terms of our large budget, along with the need that we see and has been expressed to us with really concrete information that's surrounding it. So just putting it out there, this is a tough one.
It's tough times. It's,
Are we inclined to go with the staff recommendation for these? Do we want to take each one separately?
I'm inclined to support staff recommendation, but I think I'm also would like this to be viewed as a somewhat, and soft is perhaps not the right word, but we're at this point dealing with the uncertainties. It seems to me there may be time as these uncertainties, we get a better sense of what we're looking at in terms of our budget, that we could reopen some of these decisions that we're making now. It seems like there is time to do an evaluation as, the situation becomes clearer. So that would be where I'm at the moment.
I actually like that quite a bit, given exactly what you were saying, that there's a lot that we don't know what the state is going to do in terms of its plans and how that's going to impact us, and if there's an ability to come back, whether we call it a second round or reopen it or what have you. I like that very much. I know several years ago, HCDC was able to do that as well, because funding became available. Now, who knows whether that will be, but I like your suggestion very much. I would definitely support that.
And Rachel, I think, so last year we made the recommendations in November? Or we made the recommendations earlier than
I had
that?
one, I think you did the arts and culture in October and
Okay.
business sport in November, one or the other.
Mm-hmm.
But you can certainly either direct staff that, this is a priority as we do see how the budget situation shakes out. We can flag it for your discussions in January and after for budget if you would like to invite the full council. But yeah, identifying any priorities at this point, if you want more wiggle room beyond what you're comfortable recommending today, would just be helpful to us so we kind of know what your priorities are.
And the other-
Priorities in terms of saying, yes, we want to look at this again, or in terms of a dollar amount?
Both.
Yes, right. Okay, thank you.
Well, the other thing that's weighing into my consideration of this in front of us today is the $4 million ARPA bucket that we haven't yet looked at the business support aspect of that. So there may be some overlap or collaboration that may be happening there. So at this point, I would be inclined to go with staff's recommendation. And I guess with the understanding that if those circumstances based on the budget capacity of the city and the potential rollback, as well as what may pan out with the ARPA funding for support for underestimated entrepreneurs, that could be something that would get reevaluated. Does that seem good?
All of the these entities that we're considering today are so important. And, frankly, I'm more familiar with the second group, the arts and culture presentations, but certainly the business aspect of this as we move forward. I would say, given the emphasis that we really need to give to local businesses moving forward in terms of the economic forecasts and so forth, of emphasizing localism is critical. So I'm very concerned with making sure that our efforts in that area are funded. So, yeah, I think the idea of this is it's certainly a priority for me. We can hear from the rest of council.
Okay. I think then for today, I would entertain a motion for a recommendation of $25,000 for each organization for the business development support.
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. None opposed? All right, that's our recommendation. Thank you. Thank you very much. So we'll move on to the arts and culture organizations. Did you have any introduction for us there, Rachel?
Not necessarily. My introduction that I gave earlier was kind of for both sets of
Got it.
groups. Again, a lot of need expressed, and I explained the situation, but encouraged them to come and share their thoughts and needs today. So our first organization that we have is John Chickadades, who's the executive director of the Englert Theater.
And just for everyone's understanding, I'm going to recuse myself from this one as my husband serves on the board of directors, but John will preside. Thank you.
Hey, guys.
Hello.
Thanks for having us. So I think when I presented last year, we were talking about a lot of volatility in the market at the Englert. Ticketing was down about 33%. And so to combat that, the Englert went into a position where we actually reduced ticketing events by about 33%. And we filled up our calendar with more rental events and community events. So it wasn't seen as much by the community. We were still having a lot of events, but it reduced our capacity to have earned income through things like ticketing fees and concessions. And so you'll see that on our financial report through reduced earned income. During that same time, we took a moment to go through strategic planning and programmatic mapping to understand what's actually going on with our programming, what does the community need in terms of programming, and how are we going to evolve as an organization. Through changes that we've seen post-pandemic and through changes in leadership, we needed to understand how we were moving forward as an organization, as not only the organization was evolving, but the community was evolving in terms of programming. And one of the things that this committee expressed as an interest in last year's conversation was more desire for and focus on diversity. And that's something that our organization also was really interested in. And so that's actually baked into our strategic plan moving forward. And so as we looked at our programmatic map, we completely redesigned our educational programming, which includes things like building in more diversity in arts administration, focusing on marginalized communities to build arts engagement opportunities through partnerships with the Iowa City Community School District Foundation, Right House, UAY, and really trying to build back our community partnerships that were largely severed following the pandemic. We're currently in the process of hiring our first community engagement position with the theater, and that is our last big goal of the Strength and Grow Evolve campaign, and we're doing that in conjunction with Film Scene under a shared community engagement, Office of Community Engagement. So we're really excited about that. We know that there are big changes happening in our core audience, and our audience didn't come back in the same way that we were anticipating after the pandemic. That audience has changed pretty dramatically. And so we're working hard to build new audiences, and we're working to build new structure to understand what that new audience will look like. And using metrics from the Iowa City Community School District to understand what the audience of the future will look like. And so we're reaching out actively to try to build in what the new audience will look like, reaching out and building new programs like Track Zero, which is trying to seek out younger audiences, more diverse audiences. And that's all done with intentionality to make sure that we exist not only today, but into the future. And so there's been a lot of work done. We really had to kind of strip back to, kind of the studs and kind of identify like, who are we? Who do we want to be, not only today, but into the future? Maintain the audience that we have, and then try to build as we move into the future. And so in a lot of ways, 2023 has been a rebuilding year for us. We've been very, very busy. We just went through a staff retreat, and the first day of that was kind of investigating everything that we had done in 2023, and it was like pages of things that we were like, oh my gosh, how did we do all of this in this year? Because there was just so many, major items that we had been like trying to investigate who we were and how we move forward. So it's been really rewarding to understand who we are as an organization and how our staff can contribute and who we're becoming. But it's been a challenge too, in understanding how expenses are increasing and how we overcome those expenses and how we scale appropriately. And so I think we're on the right track, but it's been a challenge as an organization. So that's kind of our update for 2023. It's been a lot of work, but we're really excited about the direction we're headed. We think we have a lot more intentionality as we move towards the future and more understanding about where we're going and who our audience will be as we move forward. Do you have questions?
Really enjoyed your presentation. I thought that, the notion of the Englert as a reflection of the community and trying to understand how the community and the Englert can co-evolve together is a very interesting concept and vision for your work. So yeah, just thank you.
May I ask, because you mentioned it a few times that sort of you lost a sort of, I don't know if it's core audience, but a significant typology of your audience from pre-pandemic to now. Can you talk a little bit more about who that audience is?
So we used to program a lot of jazz and Americana. We cannot really program that type of programming anymore. It doesn't financially work for us. And when we look at, there's an aging demographic that was our core demographic in the past that largely we've lost. And so we have to be very careful in terms of the genre that we program. We're not sure why that audience didn't return post-pandemic, but we have to be very careful in how we program. Sure. What we've seen is actually that core demographic that we were seeing at almost every show in the past. When they come back to shows, we're seeing more diversity in the audience, kind of intermixed, which is interesting. So we're seeing that core audience with younger people kind of interspersed. So it's been very interesting. The actual attendance per show is up. And so we're seeing that core audience mixed in with other people. Okay. It's been a huge shift. Before the pandemic, we could say with pretty clear certainty what a show was going to look like and what attendance would look like, what the margin would look like, almost all of those metrics. And we've had to learn that in pretty short order again. And it really took probably 18 months to try to reinvestigate what that looked like.
Sure.
And we didn't hit the mark every time. There were many shows where we lost a lot of money. So it's been difficult, but we're learning in real time, and some of it has been fun, some of it has not been fun, but we're getting through it.
Thank you so
Yeah.
much.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just wait for her. Oh.
Okay. Next, I'll have Andrew Sherburne with Executive Director and Co-founder of Film Scene.
Good morning, everyone. First of all, I just wanted to kind of acknowledge and thank staff. Talking with Rachel, I recognize that the city does have some very significant financial constraints, and this is a difficult time. And so, kind of at the suggestion of Rachel, we did want to go ahead and present our ask, our request, our need as we see it, but recognizing that the city is facing a lot of challenges, and just wanted to say right away that we are grateful for the support that we have received for many years and hopefully continue to receive at staff's recommendation today. But I did want to talk about a few things. We come, I think everyone here at this table is familiar with what we do, so I really just wanted to focus on a couple things today, which are some of the changes that we've made over the past year, and then we are celebrating our 10th birthday this year, so I just wanted to talk a little bit about the growth that we've seen over our first decade. Just, I guess, initially talking about the changes that we've seen year over year. Last year, I think we saw a lot of the same challenges that John was articulating with the Englert in changing demographics at our films. We couldn't rely on kind of old ways of programming. So we've really changed our programming pretty dramatically over the last year. Part of that required an additional staff member, a part-time programming assistant position, which now is going to be expanded later this year into a community engagement and programming coordinator position, in coordination with the initiatives that John spoke about with the Englert. Our two organizations kind of investing in that area in tandem. That additional staffing, we did increase our payroll and our staffing by about 15% last year, really so that we could do more. We were looking at kind of the financial realities of where we were last year, and really the only way forward was to either get smaller or get bigger, and we chose to kind of take the bold decision to get bigger, and what that meant was doing more programming. We now screen nearly 500 different films each year. That is like 1.5 new films per day. That's a lot of programming, and the reason for that is because that programming is incredibly varied. Yes, we're playing kind of larger films that appeal, those kind of widely seen films, but it means a lot more kind of single screenings, partnership screenings with community events, ongoing series, and those are really the series that have really become, I think, have always been, but increasingly more key to our mission to engage our diverse communities through film that challenges, inspires, educates, and entertains through a shared experience. Those screenings are highly, I think, curated, whether it be our Pride at Iowa, Pride at Film Scene series, or our African Diaspora series, our family series, The Picture Show, which we've seen about 50% growth in attendance there for that kids and family series. Our outdoor series just across the street here, Film Scene in the Park, has also seen an increase of about 50% in attendance since last year. We're now seeing crowds of usually around 300 people in the park for those free events. And, so we see, if you look at the graph here, our attendance this year has increased nearly 50% since last year, from about 50,000 to nearly 75,000 attendees. However, the revenue that we get from that programming has only increased by about a third, so about 33%. And why is that? We're doing a lot more free, pay-what-you-can programming to ensure accessibility. We're doing a lot of programming that doesn't necessarily drive box office revenue. So I think when we look at the mix, we've seen then an increase in some of the contributed support from our members, from our community members through donations. So we're making it work. It was it's a lot of moving parts, but we did see the need to really increase our connections to the community in order to sustain ourselves financially into the future. So I think it's been successful. We've seen, as I mentioned, a huge increase in attendance, which we're quite proud of at a time when nationwide overall, movie-going box office is flat year to year. We have seen incredible growth, and I think it's really through those single, kind of one-off screenings in partnership with our community members. And those take far more staff resources. They're far more expensive on a kind of per attendee basis. Your support, I think, the city's support and all of the contributed support that we receive is essential to being able to do that work. We could not do it. It does not necessarily pay for itself. So that's the story kind of year to year in some of the growth that we've seen. I also just wanted to mention, we first appeared before this committee 10 years ago when Film Scene was very young, but an idea, and the city graciously gave us very early support and put their faith in this young organization to do to make change in our community. And I think thanks to that support and that ongoing support, as well as the support of others in this community, we have grown an incredible amount over the last 10 years. Our budget has grown fivefold since our first year, from a $370,000 organization to a $1.7 million organization. We've grown from one single screen to 5 screens at 2 locations. We now have 2 outdoor screening locations, including Film Scene in the Park across the street, which I think is a space unlike anything else in the Midwest, maybe in the country. Last year, we launched our first film festival, the Refocus Film Festival, which drew over 2,000 people in a single weekend to engage in challenging films with each other. That festival is in its second year and just about 3 weeks away, and we're looking at attendance growth there, hopefully about 50% as well. So that is growing, and that's a program which really draws people in from outside, from further afield than our daily and weekly programming. So I think we've made incredible strides in 10 years with the support and involvement of the city and the rest of this community. We now have 75,000 patrons, as I mentioned, coming to Film Scene year over year. We expect that to continue to grow. And based on Americans for the Arts estimates, that's over a $2.3 million impact on the local economy when people go out to the arts. And I think this is true of every organization who will speak here today, that there's money spent at other local businesses, whether that's a meal or shopping or parking or babysitters, whatever it is, we're supporting all those different elements of the community that are tied into our cultural economy. So thank you for continuing to invest and support these organizations, and we look forward to continuing to grow.
Questions for Andrew?
Fantastic presentation, thank you. And it's really exciting to see, patrons' expansion in the numbers. You mentioned as well, and I'm incredibly impressed by the notion of saying, well, we had 2 options and that you decided to go bigger. Intermixed in that, you said that there's been an awful lot of, in the background work to, garner more financial support independently, so through fundraising. And can you just speak a little bit more, because I'm interested in sort of seeing, obviously the arts are something that we do support, find incredibly core, of core value for the city and who we are. But I'm interested in sort of seeing or hearing more about what kinds of things you anticipate you will need to do to help with your own contributions to the budget or what have you, in addition to the amount that you're working with us.
Yeah, so when Film Scene was kind of a single location, two-screen operation, we saw like about 35% of our of our income came from contributed income. As we grew, that share kind of dropped a little bit to under 30%, and we're trying to get it back to where it was. We got bigger. It takes a little while to grow contributed income to that level. So last year we invested in a staff member. We've grown our staff in some meaningful ways in the last year. We added this year a membership and development director, which is the first time that we've had someone whose daily responsibilities are growing those contributed income sources. We made some changes to our membership program to kind of drive a little bit more revenue there. But even as we did that, we simultaneously I think thought about the part of our mission, which is to maintain accessibility to the arts. So we actually created a new level of membership, which gets discounted admissions and lots of other perks. That was even lower, only $30 for the year for anyone under the age of 30 or facing financial hardship, kind of self-identified. And there's even little fine print on that says, if this is still out of reach for you, send us an email and we'll make it work. So I think part of it is really finding those people who are able to contribute more and asking them to contribute more while at the same time saying we will meet you wherever you need to be met to make sure that you can be a part of the organization, because that membership program is not just key to our kind of financial health, but it's key to the community that we're trying to build, that we are building at Film Scene and through our cultural institutions, saying that everyone is welcome here. We want to see you often, that this is, an extension of your home, and that you should find a place of belonging here.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Something notable that I see, Andrew, in the growth charts that you've shown us here is you talk about going from an organization with the 2 screens on the Ped Mall to now 5, 6, if you count the one outside, right?
Yeah.
So when I'm looking at the growth, where do you expect this will sort of top out? Because Chauncey opened in 2019?
Yeah, correct. September of 2019.
Okay. And so, when we look at the big hit from the pandemic then in 2020, but you've exceeded all of the pre-pandemic attendance, can you forecast, like, what's the upper limit?
Yeah, well, I think this year is the first time that we got to the pre-pandemic projections that we had for the organization. We wanted, in the year 2020, we were expecting to hit 75,000 attendees, and then, of course, we did not. But now we've gotten back there. So I think we've now reached that level that we wanted to be at when we opened that facility. Looking at kind of national, and this is, of course, more in the kind of for-profit traditional Hollywood model, but the box office is still down significantly by about 20 to 25% from where it was pre-pandemic. So there's still growth to be seen there, and people just kind of coming back to the movies, and the system, the film industry, creating enough varied and diverse product to kind of bring more people back to the movies. So we expect to see some growth there as the overall industry continues to recover. So hopefully that we see that growth, and that might be if we can get back if the industry as a whole can get back to where it was, we might see an additional 10 to 20% growth. We do still know that there are plenty of people in this community who don't know us as well as we would like them to. I think a lot of that growth this year was also built on identifying new audiences, something that we did this year, and it was successful, and we want to continue to do that. We did that in some small kind of test ways of reaching out to geographically new audiences and inviting them to downtown Iowa City. So we're going to continue to do that. I think that can contribute some additional growth. And then this is a growing community still, both in Iowa City and surrounding areas, so we expect to see some growth there. So, where does that leave us? Maybe we can see another 20% growth, maybe 90,000 attendees perhaps. At some point, we just reach capacity with what we're able to do through the amount of, unless people really get into like midday matinees again. But there's only so many. This year we had a lot of sellouts in the evenings in those kind of prime, Friday nights and Saturdays during the day, and so we can't actually fit any more people in there. But I do think we could still see some significant growth.
Appreciate
I
that.
really appreciate your public engagement efforts. I just feel that in all aspects of our work with the city, how we engage with the public is so important. And, just hearing that from you and the other organizations, I think we can learn from one another in terms of how we most successfully understand our community. I mean, I feel I'm personally living, I feel in some ways in the shadow of COVID. It's still affecting how I behave. And, because I do like live entertainment and film, but for some reason, I'm not as engaged with it as I was before. But I do appreciate your efforts in reaching out and also your programming reflecting what you've learned.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm. Anything else for Film Scene? Thank you, Andrew.
Yeah, thank you.
Adam Knight with the Riverside Theater.
And I've asked our Director of Outreach and Education, Kathleen Johnson, to sit up here too. Hi, everybody. It's great to be with you. It's a little early for theater folk, but we're in it. It's so great to see you again, and this is just a wonderful opportunity for us to look back and look ahead and look at the strides that our organization has made, particularly with city support. I am pleased to report that Riverside successfully completed its first full season in our new downtown venue. We served more than 6,500 ticket-buying patrons last season. If you add to that rental events and the 2,781 folks who came to Free Shakespeare, we served about 10,000 patrons in 22-23. Last season featured 8 full productions. That's our first 8 production season since pre-pandemic, including a world premiere by celebrated local writer-performer Megan Gogarty, as well as the Iowa City premiere of The Roommate by award-winning former playwriting workshop MFA Jen Silverman, and that's a play that was set in Iowa City, of all places. One particular highlight was Riverside Theater's revival of Pfeffu and Her Friends by Maria Irene Fornés. This play is considered one of the seminal works of feminist theater and one of the first modern plays in which the audience moves around multiple performance locations. It's seldom done because of its ambitious space constraints. Because of our new ADA-friendly building, 993 patrons of all abilities were able to move among 5 performance spaces on 2 floors of our venue. This play was also part of a national, decade-long celebration of Fornés's work, Celebrando Fornés. The play employed 8 performers plus an equity contract for the stage manager. Riverside, in fact, engaged 7 equity members over the course of this season, 2 of which were people of color, and 4 of those 7 were women. We are the only theater in eastern Iowa that regularly employs union members, and one of only 2 theaters in Iowa with a standing agreement with Actors Equity Association. The other is a showboat somewhere. Pfeffu featured a cast of all women and 3 out of 8 actors of color. Diversity and gender parity continue to be overt goals of our artistic decisions. We know how important it is for a theater that prides itself on hiring local professionals to reflect the demographics of its community. Last season, BIPOC performers made up 30% of all hires, and 57% were female identifying. These strides continue our strategic goal to expand the types of stories we tell and who gets to tell them. Last season, Riverside contracted 140 artists. These contracts range from between $600 for a board operator to $5,800 for an equity stage manager, $147,000 total. With 85% of all hires being local, that means that Riverside plays a crucial role in the artistic ecosystem here in Iowa City. And those out-of-town hires each stay in Iowa City for 5 to 7 weeks, staying in rented housing and dining locally. As a theater committed to increasing access to the arts, balancing earned income with mission is always tricky. Free Shakespeare provided 2,781 free tickets, yet was our most expensive production at $50,000. 775 students took advantage of our $15 student tickets. That means that 38% of all patrons at Riverside receive free or steeply discounted tickets. We know that this work makes great art accessible to more families and underserved communities, while also inspiring the next generation of theater goers. We believe that a great city deserves serious-minded professional theater, and next season we will continue to forge ahead with that mission. Increased partnerships, an American premiere and a world premiere, and a renovation of the Riverside Festival stage in Lower City Park, shout out to Parks and Rec Department, which will ensure that Free Shakespeare continues to be part of the culture of our summers. Kind of in an inverse way to what Andrew from Film Scene described, earned income makes only 30% of the income needed for Riverside to achieve its mission. And this Riverside is similar to other peer theaters around the country. However, as you may have heard or seen in the Times or on PBS or in various publications, regional theaters are in crisis, and many have turned to emergency fundraising or are closing their doors. To sustain operations and get ahead of this wave, Riverside is seeking more from all stakeholders, while also making tough but needed operational cuts, going from a staff of 10 to a staff of 8, and eliminating 2 off-site facilities in Cedar Rapids. Nonetheless, we've been expanding our investment in area education, making the education coordinator position now a full-time director of education and outreach, and greatly expanding student to artist teaching through Willpower, our upcoming playmaking project, and our partnership with Any Given Child. We asked this committee to consider the growth of Riverside over the last 5 years and our special place as a producing organization with national scope here in Iowa City. We are requesting an increase to $30,000 of annual support, with $10,000 specifically earmarked for Free Shakespeare programming in Lower City Park. When I first arrived in fiscal year 2019, city support was about 5% of our annual budget. It now stands at 2.5%. We are very grateful for this unique partnership with the city and its steadfast support not only of Riverside Theater, but of the arts and culture organizations represented here that make our city so great. Thank you.
Appreciate that. Any questions for Adam or Kathleen? Did you have anything you want to share with us?
No, just thank you. I'm happy to be here. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them, particularly in those areas.
Just thank you. Thank you for your work
Yeah.
this past year.
I think the framing that you provided when you were talking in particular about whom you employ and the opportunity for equity actors to be part of the community, and then really extending the logic of saying, you know, the ways in which your work actually really impacts not just the theater going experience, but also really is helping, as do all of the arts here in Iowa City, but sort of extending that ecosystem it was just a phrase that really struck home with me, and I appreciate very much. It's like I've heard variations on the theme from everyone thus far, and it's so true. It is such a delicate balancing act to have to work through the economics of this while also understanding that your mission has, you know, it is part of that, but it's really about accessibility and about outreach and about creating, you know, these incredibly important, thoughtful, emotional experiences for the community and beyond. And the two seem diametrically opposed, and yet all of you are walking that tightrope. So I just want to say thank you.
Thank you.
That's one question I had, Adam, was you speak to not community theaters, but theaters like yours being in crisis throughout the country. So how are you seeing that reflected in your operations? I mean, from the outside, it looks like you're thriving and doing so well. So can you just speak to that a little bit?
And we certainly think that at this point that's the right message to be sending. And in some ways, Riverside is a healthy organization, more so than some of these theaters around the country. I think like Danglert and Film Scene was mentioning, we're seeing a major shift in audience-going patterns and who's coming to our shows. We moved away from a subscription model a few years ago, in part to get in front of this trend of kind of subscription audiences fading away. Our membership package gives more flexibility to those ticket-buying patrons, but they're not locked into shows. So it means that if someone really wants to see The Trip to Bountiful this season, they might not go see Herein Lies the Truth in April. That's a risk that is tough, but it also I think our audiences have learned to appreciate the new work that we do, and I don't think a lot of our audiences are just here for the classics. I think that Riverside smartly, and this started before my time, started to understand the shifts that were going to be happening in the theater world. I think a lot of theaters around the country too are really reckoning with the fact that as primarily white organizations, they were employing even greater percentages of white artists. Riverside intentionally, starting in 2019, really started looking at those numbers and making sure that we were reflecting our community. I think that a lot of those theaters are seeing, did not lay the groundwork for those conversations the way that Riverside did. And I think that our audiences have thankfully been with us. That said, things like increased costs of materials, we're paying artists more now than we were 4 years ago. All of those equity contracts have increased by 10 or 15% as part of our agreement with the unions. So we're seeing those costs go up, but the audience numbers are not going up at the same percentage.
Appreciate that. Thank you. Anything else for Riverside? Thank you.
Thank you.
Lisa Barnes, Summer of the Arts.
Good morning, everybody. I'm going to approach this a little bit differently. I'm going to speak from the heart. You have all the numbers in our report. Sitting here, listening to all of these other arts organizations and hearing, about their growth and the wonderful things that they do, it just makes me feel so fortunate to be a part of the Iowa City community. And when Summer of the Arts was formed in 2005, I was like, this is my dream job, to work for an arts organization like this, because I am passionate about what we do and the events that brought Summer of the Arts together. This year we celebrated the 40th anniversary of the Arts Festival and the 30th anniversary of the Friday Night Concert Series and 32 years of the Jazz Festival. It's impressive that we've been around so long. And unlike, the other arts organizations, we don't sell tickets. So all of our money has to come from different sources, whether that be sponsors, individual donors, grants. We try to look at a variety of models, and then you have a storm blow through the Arts Fest and everybody leaves the beverage garden and you don't make as much money. Things like that happen and you just run that risk repeatedly. But the thing that we all really have in common is we're all very passionate about the arts and the importance of the arts in our community and the importance of building community through the arts. All of us offer different programming. As they've all said, they offer free programming. And that's so impressive because so many places don't have this kind of access to the arts. And I know we wouldn't be here without the city of Iowa City and the support that we've received ever since the organization was formed, and prior to that with some of the individual events that we produce. And we really appreciate that. And we look at ways every year that we can, change things up? What can we do differently? We talked last year about Music on the Move. That is a great thing that came out of the pandemic. And over the past couple of years, it has really strengthened our partnership with Iowa City Parks and Rec and working with them and bringing people out to these beautiful parks that we have. I worked one of the events last year and had a woman that came down from Cedar Rapids and was at Terry Trueblood, and she was so impressed. She's like, oh my gosh, Cedar Rapids doesn't have anything like this. And I said, you need to come to the next one when James Tetson is playing. And I actually saw her at another one this year, so she did come back. And so, I think it's a great way to show off our community. When we decided to change up our performers at Music on the Move this year, we had 6 different performers this year. We had 1 female, 1 non-binary, 3 people of color, and Dave Zolo. Got to have Dave Zolo in there. So that wasn't going to change. But we've really strived this year to diversify our programming from the types of music that we're offering. We had a hip-hop night Friday night at the Friday Night Concert Series. First time this year, first time in our history we've offered hip-hop. We also had that as part of Juneteenth. We also had it the previous week as an opener. And so we're diversifying the performances as well as the people who are on stage. And that has been very deliberate on the part of our planning committees. If you attended the Arts Fest this year, you probably saw a lot more diverse people and music on the stage. And again, it's something that, we look at every year in talking about reflecting our community. And also a big part of Arts Fest to me is opening up our community to different cultures and different art forms and that kind of thing. And I think that's always been an integral part of that festival. And so we've really worked to change things up a little bit. And we partnered with the Englert this year to do a fundraiser so that we could bring in Alejandro Escovedo as our headliner at Arts Fest, which was extremely helpful because he was a huge hit. So, what we're doing is we're looking at different ways that we can serve our community. Having the free movie series move out into the parks, that's been another fun partnership with Parks and Rec. We were actually in a barn at the Johnson County Fairgrounds on Saturday night because of the weather, which was a fun, different location. It's been nice to try some different things since Film Scene, has such a great location downtown. Andrew and I talked years ago. I said it doesn't make sense for us to continue trying to be on the Pentacrest when you've got this. So it's been great to be able to get out into the neighborhoods. And we did request a small increase. And honestly, part of that reason, which I did not put in the report because I had to talk to my board first, is we really like activating different spaces around town. And what we'd like to do is strengthen our partnership with Iowa City Parks and Rec and develop a monthly concert series at Riverfront Crossings Park. And so the funding that we're requesting, the additional funding, would go toward rental of a stage. There's no shade there. You guys know that. It's a huge space, kind of hard to activate, but we've met with Parks and Rec, and we have some ideas that we think could really get people to that park and make it a fun destination location for people. And so that's what we're looking at trying to do for next year, but we do have to bring in a stage, covered stage for performers. We actually talked about bringing some of our tents and popping those up so there's shade for people sitting and watching the performance, having Parks and Rec there, potentially trying to get like the Iowa Children's Museum involved. We even talked about maybe after one of the concerts, let's show a movie there too. So you can stay for the music and then you can enjoy a movie right afterwards because timing would work really well. So that's why we asked for a little bit more money. We do truly appreciate everything the city does, all the different departments that we work with that are just so important and crucial to what we do as an organization. And that's basically it. I was going to go into like my history and, one of those people that came here to school and stayed and all that stuff. It doesn't matter. But, it's just what can we do to help Iowa City continue to grow and be a strong community, especially when the world is a hot mess right now. And the arts are an escape, right, guys? It's an escape. It's a way to show your creativity, get involved, and that's what we all want to do, make the world a better place. World peace. Sorry, it's Monday morning. I haven't had enough caffeine yet. I'm being corny.
I think we're with you, Lisa.
Yeah.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Sure.
Are there questions for Summer of the Arts?
Well, not so much a question since I've done nothing but make comments after everyone, but I just want to say that this is like, what's so wonderful about Summer of the Arts is that for those of you sitting in the audience and who've done the talked about each of your pieces, it's like it creates this really strong mosaic. And one of the things that I love the most about Summer of the Arts is that your commitment is to being in the community as well, and that you are constantly very self-reflexively asking, how is this working? Are there ways we can do this better? Are there places that we need to go? And you're very, very open to feedback. So
Yes, thank you.
That's just one of the things that I like, sort of hearing the whole, is that this is, your particular composite is so different from the others, and yet it all fits together, right? You're like mobile. And so anyway, I appreciate your piece of it, and it works really well with the community that is here in the room.
Thank you.
Sorry, I pontificate when I'm not awake.
I met Megan on my way in, running
I know,
back
she
to
was like, "I
get
haven't
my
had pop."
pop because I don't drink coffee. I drink,
And I
that's
thought
my
walking in
caffeine.
with my jumbo.
Yeah.
Well, I certainly appreciated your emphasis on the Music on the Move programming. Council members know I'm almost obsessed with the notion of neighborhood and
Yeah.
how important that is to the strength of a community. So it's not only, diversifying and bringing the music to the neighborhood, it's an opportunity for the neighborhood to acquaint itself with one another.
Yes.
And within their own habitat, so to speak.
Yeah.
And I think that's extremely important. It's just, again, a way we can leverage our arts programming to build social capital within our community. And again, looking forward into the uncertainties we're facing, I feel that's an extremely important
Yes.
thing that we need to do so that we build trust among one another and
Yes.
become acquainted with one another and can address whatever it is we'll be facing. So I really appreciate that. We had just anecdotally our own little neighborhood gathering in the north side. Got some neighborhood pin grant money, hired Dave Moore, brought some food to the event. It was hugely successful despite the fact that a rainstorm happened right in the middle of it. But we fortunately did have the canopy cover of the trees, we had the canopy cover of the gazebo, and it actually made the whole event that much more memorable.
Yeah.
Very few people left. That we all hung out. It wasn't fortunately a long rainstorm.
Oh,
But it actually brought us together at that event, and it added to the whole experience.
we had one Music on the Move that had just a little bit of rain, and you can see Kevin Burt's in the shelter, and everybody's just gathered around him, and
Dave
Yeah.
had originally oriented out toward the lawn areas, and then it started raining, and just turned his chair around.
Yeah.
Faced the people in the gazebo, and the gazebo was designed in such a way that could happen.
yeah, we actually did a movie at Willow Creek last year, I think it was, where the weather was bad, and we set it up just outside of the gazebo, and everybody sat under the gazebo to watch the screen, so that was fun.
But yeah, you are, as you noted, vulnerable to the weather.
Very.
Unlike, some of our other speakers today, so thank you again.
Thank you. Thanks.
And your gap is very small, so.
Yeah. Like I said, we just wanted a little bit extra to cover that rental of the stage so that we can start that concert series.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Great.
John Kenyon with UNESCO City of Literature wasn't able to be with us, so we have Judith Levitt, who's the board vice president, correct?
And actually, since I'm on the board of the City of Literature, I'm going to head out.
Good morning. Thank you very much for this opportunity. I just want to start by saying that I lived in Cedar Rapids for 31 years and was the first degreed librarian at Rockwell Collins. I've always had a love of literature and books and reading. But in 2008, when Iowa City was named UNESCO City of Literature, I turned to my husband and said, we're going to live there. And so 3 years later, we were down here in Coralville. And last year, I joined the City of Literature on the board, which has been just an exciting opportunity for me. And again, thank you so much for all the continued support for the City of Literature over the last several years. And so we're just asking for stable funding for the next year. A couple of noteworthy events that you're probably all familiar with and that I've had a really fun opportunity to engage in the last year or so. The One Book, Two Book Children's Festival, Children's Literature Festival. It was an amazing experience to hear children from the age of 6 through high school read their works to people in the community. Their family members were there, and City of Literature board members and others in the community. The poise of these young people in sharing their works just astounded me. And then this summer, I got to go to several of the Music IC events, which you've talked about diversity. So this was focused on female composers. There were a couple of exciting events there this summer. The Poetry in Public events, it has been widened to Johnson County, the entire county participation, not just the city. And then, of course, our biggest event of the year coming up very soon, the Iowa City Book Festival. And in 2022, there were 2 weeks of programming, 40 different events, collaborating with 18 different community organizations to put on that programming. And as I mentioned, that's coming up very soon now. October 8th through the 19th will be this year's book festival, collaborating again with a number of organizations. And another outstanding event this year is the United States Department has just renewed the commitment to UNESCO after a gap of several years. So we've renewed our U.S. participation in UNESCO, and hopefully a lot of that funding will follow. And you may be familiar or aware that John Kayan, the Executive Director of the City of Literature, has been the coordinator for the Cities of Literature Network in UNESCO for the last year. He's had an opportunity to travel and to engage with a lot of other cities of literature. And just recently, we had the opportunity to share and read a lot of the applications for Cities of Literature worldwide. Again, an eye-opening experience for me. So the City of Literature promotes and encourages love of literature and translation in the community and on state, worldwide. One of the things that the board is concerned about most right now is staff capacity. It's John and Rachel, 2 people providing all this programming throughout the year with board support. So we will be doing, we're ending that right now our latest strategic planning couple of years. And next spring, we will be engaging in another strategic planning opportunity. So we hope to do a complete landscape analysis. We've begun that already, taking a look at who are all of our local partners we've been engaging with, who are all of our state partners, all of our national partners, other cities of literature, and who are all of our international partners. And then we'll be taking a good hard look at, are these the areas we should be focused at? Are there areas we should pull back from? Where do we really want to engage, and how will that affect staffing capacity? So we're looking forward to increasing diversity in that plan going forward, and just really taking a good hard look after 15 years of being a city of literature. What will be our goals and our plans going forward for the next 4 to 5 years? So I'm fairly new. This is my second year on the board. So if there are any questions, I may have to relay them to John, or I'll try to answer them for you.
Thank you so much. John, any questions?
Again, thank you for the efforts of the organization. It's really another important pillar in terms of our cultural, the range of expressions of our culture in the Iowa City community.
No, and I hope you all are gearing up for the festival coming up. I think this program will be on the website, UNESCO website, very soon. But, a couple of pages of programming for about 10 days. 70 authors, I think, coming, so it's going to be very exciting.
It's phenomenal.
And as the other organizations mentioned, I don't know that the City of Literature has done this yet, but certainly there's a huge economic impact on the community, too, with all of these events. Do you have any questions I could relay back to John, perhaps?
I've had the opportunity to serve on the board in the past as well, so that's sort of my familiarity with the organization, less in depth over the last few years. I do have just kind of the theme we've been hearing of reaching into the community, you know, and that programmatically, I'd be interested in seeing how that's happening in the City of Literature, and
Okay.
yeah, just knowing, I'm very familiar with those events that happen downtown, and less familiar if there's programmatic opportunities elsewhere in the community with any of those. So,
Okay. I know that the one that I'm familiar with is the Poetry in Public, which was expanded, you know, from the city to the county. But there are probably others that I'm not as familiar with, so I will relay that to John.
great.
Yeah, I had not heard the term landscape analysis before, so.
That's my
that was-
Rockwell corporate background.
that was-
And I spent, 15 years as the corporate librarian and 15 years in strategic planning, so I'm pushing the board a little bit in a
Good.
more strategic direction, I think. Any questions?
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Councilor Burgess, what I would suggest, given the couple recusals we have, is that the whole committee, the three of you, discuss the funding for Film Scene, Riverside Theater, and Summer of the Arts, and then separately consider Englert Theater and UNESCO City of Literature with the respective members recusing.
Makes good sense. Thank you. All right, so what we have before us is a request from, I will take those three separately, so Film Scene, Riverside Theater, and Summer of the Arts. Film Scene was at the level of $32,000 in the prior year and is requesting an increase to $40,000, which is between Film Scene operations and the Refocus Film Festival. Riverside Theater was at $20,000 and is requesting $30,000, and Summer of the Arts was at $67,000 and is requesting $70,350. Just open it up for discussion. We can all say it's hard. It's just-
You took away my pithy comment.
yeah, yeah. It's
Well, the gaps here are less significant than we saw with the economic development organizations. I mean, I think my comments would be the same, however, that, I'm inclined to support the idea of for the moment, leaving the recommendation with staff's recommendation. However, I do think it's important that we look at this again as we move forward and see how our budget looks as more information comes in. I have been impressed. My sense from the presentations too is that we're still in the shadow of COVID, and that, Laura, you mentioned, and I don't recall at the moment where we are with our ARPA funding, but it does seem to me that, what we're experiencing in the arts and in our business organizations, to some degree there's the overlay of COVID that's affecting everything still. And so, I think that could be something we could consider, the council could consider in terms of funding sources, looking into that as well.
I was just thinking about that and wanted to ask Rednan or Rachel. I know that there was a certain amount allocated for hotels, and I don't remember what the bucket was. It was hotels for sure, but wasn't it also like hotels and recreation or hotels and entertainment or something like that? And has that been all discharged, those dollars?
Yeah, well, so one of very initial high-level priorities set, I believe it was like arts, culture, and tourism.
Right.
And so we had done the tourism grants with Think Iowa City. I don't remember if we had done grants regardless, we had allocated for the uses, not necessarily for that category. So the most recent update memo that we provided to City Council kind of identified, kind of where we're at with what we've allocated and what's remaining, and maybe some ideas for that. So, yeah, again, there's wiggle room. We haven't spent all of our ARPA funds, so.
Because it looks to me like the ask, and this was me clumping together all of the ones, including the ones that are recusal, was like $21,000.
Right.
That's the gap.
Right.
So,
And it's these three that we're discussing
yes,
right now.
yeah. So that's 80, yeah.
Well, and certainly this process is different than other grants processes that we have in the city, certainly different from the ARPA, which is its own animal. But I do think it's very helpful to hear, something like a specific collaboration for activating a particular city park, Lisa, that concert series idea. Yeah, just as far as considerations for what other buckets or sources we might be able to use. I think just to zoom out a little bit, I also think that, we have an opportunity with this committee as well as the staff support and, with Wendy Ford just having left, I think we can be kind of like looking at this in a holistic way that we haven't had the opportunity to before. Not right now, but for the coming cycle. That is just to say that sort of pushes me towards going with the status quo and the staff recommendations for right now, with an understanding, again, that we're hearing themes, we're seeing this need for localism that increases resiliency, that is out in the community, and that we can maybe be kind of evaluating that in the next cycle.
The next cycle being
In the
following year?
Either in the following, well, I think right now
Right.
we don't really know. Yeah.
I mean, the circumstances haven't changed since we first heard the economic development folks. I recognize that.
Right.
Yeah.
Correct. Yeah. So I guess I am inclined at this point to go with the staff's recommendation, acknowledging the significant need and increase in need with all of the expenses and challenges that we're facing.
Yeah, I mean, this is new information, so, hopefully we can, that can factor that in as we look at our budget.
Which would be over the next few months into April at the latest, right? Okay.
I will admit that I'm a little torn, and I also recognize that my conflict is not necessarily fair to all the entities, because I also was impressed with, granted that it's a small ask for the Summer of the Arts, but also there was specificity to it. But I realized that, that's like, that it's something that struck me, but that's not a fair expectation, and that the other entities as well have pointed out sort of holistically what the needs are. So I just wanted to be very transparent about that, but I'm inclined as well to vote with staff recommendation, but I very much would like to look at, once legislation has figured out what we get to have or not have, to be able to look to see if we can further support.
Is that a motion?
Yes. I move that we go with staff for the moment and look once the state has made its adjustments and how it impacts our budget for us to be able to look at this again.
So I think just for clarity, we would maybe have this on an agenda item for this committee.
Yes.
At some point.
Yeah.
Around before the end of the year, around the first of the year, as we're entering into that, once we have more information.
Yes.
Okay. Then, is there a second?
Second?
Any further discussion on this motion for Film Scene Riverside and Summer of the Arts? All those in favor to fund at the recommended levels, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? No? All right. Let you take Englert.
Okay.
On the ground.
Okay, well, we have the Englert, and it's, there is no gap here.
Right.
So I think that makes this discussion that much easier. Comments?
No, I'm fine
Yeah,
with this.
would ask then for a motion on that.
I move that we fund the Englert at both their ask and the staff recommendation, which is the same.
I will second that. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, so that motion passes.
All right, then we'll have consideration for the UNESCO City of Literature with the requested and recommended amount of $60,000. I'll make that motion.
I'll second that motion.
Any other discussion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Unopposed? All right. Can we begin? She just looked away. Oh. Great. Well, thank you all so much for being here today, for your time, your commitment to our Iowa City community, everything that you do. And yeah, we'll keep in touch. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
You're of course welcome to stay, but you may have other things that you wish to do with your morning.
All right, so we're on to staff report. I have two things I'd like to cover. An update on our ARPA funds and what we've used, the various kind of economic development uses we've had so far. So a few projects on that. First, I'll just give an update on our agreement with the UI Nonprofit Labor Center for the pre-apprenticeship program that was serving underrepresented populations in the skilled construction trades. And I got an update from Robin this weekend, and it's very exciting. They did a high level of outreach and engagement leading up to this fall cohort, and so they ended up with 32 people registered in the program, age ranging from 17 to mid-30s. All are from populations designated as underrepresented in those skilled trades, and a majority of them are people of color. So we're excited about that, and that will be kicking off here soon. The Inclusive Economic Development, sorry, did you have questions about that one? Okay. The Inclusive Economic Development Program, I asked Redmond if he could give a kind of brief update on the status of that.
Is that what brief looks like?
Yeah, we're going to go through all of this right
All
here.
right.
Yeah. No, I did want to just kind of cover, this has been kind of an evolutionary process. And so I know you know a lot of this, but obviously in 2021, ARPA was signed by the president. Around September of that same year, the council began to talk about how those funds could be used, and BIPOC business ecosystem was really kind of, it began to be introduced. September 2022, Johnson County had contracted with Astique Planning, a BIPOC business itself, to conduct an inclusive economic development plan, which was then presented to City Council. Right around the same time City Council was going through its strategic planning process, which also valued and highlighted much of these same initiatives. March in 2023, we actually put out something much different than we typically do with grant processes. We did a statement of interest where we invited people to look at not necessarily their business needs, but what is the impacts that can be made to the business ecosystem, and how that could be assisted in either public or physical space or business support. And so we kind of anticipated from planning purposes that we would have somewhere around $3 million for physical space, just because physical space usually involves things like real estate and capital expenditures, typically more expensive, and business support being around $1 million for a total of around $4 million. So we got a tremendous response to that. 31 entities showed interest in that, with roughly $26 million in requests for that $4 million outlay. So around June of 2023, the review committee, at that time, myself, Mayor Teague, Wendy Ford, met with one-on-ones with all of the eligible physical space applicants. That was roughly around 7 applicants. We met with them one-on-one for that month. The very next month, August of 2023, we had a series of 3 meetings, which were partnership exploration meetings, we call them. The intent there was to bring those groups that we had one-on-ones with physical space requirements together to explore partnerships. September, we had a deadline for those groups to present any partnerships to be considered as a joint application. We had one that actually decreased their budget because they had found that others in that group were offering the same things and thought that they were more prepared and better suited to offer that particular service. So that was a good thing, although we couldn't get a joint, although there was some work there, it just wasn't enough to pull together a true partnership. So the committee then went in and began to prioritize those applications. We have a short list now. And now we're doing a deeper dive with our short list to hopefully get them prepared to be presented to City Council for an official vote of direction to get into even a deeper dive into helping them develop a full proposal, which would then also come back to City Council. So that's kind of to date where we are. It has certainly been an evolutionary process for the committee. We're at sometimes not knowing what the next turn is going to be, but right now that's what we believe our next turn is. And we're looking at visiting with one of those short lists this week, with the idea right now to have the other 2 as alternates should something along the process of our initial deeper dive show to be kind of maybe unsurmountable issue or something. So we'll have another one that can step up. So I think that's kind of where we are right now. Any questions, thoughts?
Redmond, do you see this committee playing any role in the process as it unfolds from here?
I'm sorry, I didn't catch the front part.
Do you see this committee playing any role in the process?
Yeah, so as we move forward, we're going to be kind of like a full service connection to this. So, and I also should say, after Wendy left, we did bring in some outside technical assistance, Jasmine, and I'm horrible with her last name, with Kirkwood. Mm-hmm. Yes, she's helped us with facilitation of those partnership meetings, and we've kept her involved as we also have deliberated with our short list. So we anticipate, to answer your question more directly, to continue to work with them to develop that full proposal, helping them through any of the technical aspects if it is involving some architectural designs for some preliminary things to help them with any type of real estate things to get site control so that we can have more detailed planning processes and like that. We plan on being with them to help them with those pieces. So yeah, we're kind of kind of think of ourselves as a partner in the process. That's one of the reasons why we kind of asked for Jasmine to come in and help us so that we can be at the table, not just as a grantor, but also as a partner to be able to help them or at least find the help that they need so that we can get to a full proposal development.
So would that come through the Economic Development Committee or just go directly to?
Well, yeah, frankly, I think we're open in that area, but our initial thoughts was that it would be going directly to City Council.
And so the timing of that part, I mean, just for the capital, that first section, do we know how soon that will go to council?
Yeah, and I should probably have thought to talk a little bit more about this, but obviously the capital was the big piece that we wanted to take on first. We also realized, and we're very focused on sustainability, and so some of the, many of the proposals that we looked at also had some business support aspects to their proposal as well, even though we focused on the physical space aspect of it. Obviously, with sustainability, if they're looking at business support being part of the mechanism to bring in revenues in their plan, we wanted to give that, consideration too, because obviously we don't want to get the physical space set up and then find out that they can't meet their utility expenses, maintenance expenses, and we're also looking at like a capital reserve because we know that business space is going to require maintenance issues over the long haul, and we want them to consider those things going into it. So we're really looking that, once these ARPA dollars are expended, that this is a process that continues on.
That was actually my question, is what kinds of conversations have there been about the sustainability beyond? So
Yeah, yes. So, and we're also hoping, so we have a whole nother slew of business support proposals that we will be able to funnel those into the physical space. Many of them are working out of their homes, they're not really looking for physical spaces now, but that's also because there's not that many physical spaces that are available. And once they're available, there may be opportunities to then bring those into the fold with an overall center of some sort that could also help with the sustainability of the overall project and then create synergies with providing various services in one area that people can then obviously access.
I think, although the intent was that, both those capital and business support recommendations will go to the full city council, obviously we won't have enough funding likely to fund all of the projects. And so if it's your desire to have that be a future agenda item for this committee of just how we can continue to support inclusive economic development, perhaps even some of the applications that were submitted, I think that's your role and would be a fair agenda item that you could ask for in the future.
I feel like we need a standing agenda item of inclusive economic development, honestly.
this feels like it might be, I don't know, perhaps too in the weeds, so you don't have to go there per se. Is yours, have the projects, I know that initially, and even as you have updated us, that what proved to be the case is that through these, 32 applications, that there was so much overlap and that there was synergy and duplication, if you will. And so the idea was how to really make this, leverage the money that's available and to create strong collaborations, right? Do you feel that there's been a particular swing towards, for lack of a better way to put it, a watering down of initial visions of each of these entities in order to be collaborative? Or do people on, like I say, it's a delicate question. It's also one that's somewhat in the weeds. But just a general impression would be helpful, because I know that, in order to acquire the funding, people will say, okay, what can we do? What's our boundaries? What are our limits? And yet, how true to sort of initial visions have remained, I guess, is my question, because I'm a little concerned in that regard, while at the same time understanding that there might be strength through a whole new vision.
Yeah. So I think with the process, what I call the partnership exploration process in the month of August, it was something quite different than what we're used to doing, bringing all of the competing factors together in a room and trying to hash out without kind of giving or breaking the integrity of each individual's application, right? So it did wind up that they themselves shared their applications with each other. And in there, at least one said, you're going to be way better at this than we can do. So we're going to, decrease our budget. So I don't know if I would say that was watering down, but they certainly said, okay, you can handle that. And we feel comfortable that there's enough of that particular service out there, right? So they knew that their need was out there. They were just trying to fill that need.
Right. Okay.
We had some others, and I'm protecting the names here, right? So there's some others that the committee certainly feels this group does this better, that particular aspect, than maybe Group C, but maybe overall Group C's application is a little stronger on multiple other fronts. It would for sure be nice if we can bring in Group B to provide this service, but we don't want to force that, right? We are heavily suggesting that, and I think when we get into more of a deeper dive and we find out that that's just not going to be viable for Group C to provide, then we get to introduce back Group B and say, you sure you can't work with Group B to provide this particular service, because right now that particular service doesn't look like it's going to be able to be part of the overall proposal. You might have to drop that piece altogether, and then Group B will have to pick it up wherever they are, maybe off-site, maybe it's inefficient for the end user, those kind of conversations. So that's kind of where we've been kind of talking that through, trying to respect each individual's proposal, suggest where partnerships is without being forceful and saying you're not going to get there. Because we know once we step away, if those partnerships don't come naturally, they'll break apart. And so we've been really running that balance of, hey, this really looks good right here. This is something I think you should explore. And there's been a lot of conversations, but those partnerships just don't happen in a month just because our timeline says we have a month to talk through it. So we're hoping that they're still continuing to talk. And from what I understand, those conversations are ongoing.
And I think the other thing I just want to observe with the business support aspect being $1 million, the proposals we approved today were $50,000. And so the scope is significantly different, and hope we can talk about that holistically in the future. Any other staff reports?
The last kind of small business workforce development item was included in that recent memo, ARPA update memo regarding SMID support for the 2 self-supporting municipal improvement districts, downtown and south of 6. So staff had recommended $250,000 grants to each, and we're in conversation with those executive directors to talk about how they could leverage the funds or how they could see it being helpful to their district. So that would come back to City Council for a full recommendation.
I don't know if this has gone anywhere, but I recall I had a conversation with someone who thought that perhaps because the south of 6 SMID is so much newer, that perhaps the scalability, the proportion, this person wasn't necessarily all that comfortable with it. I don't know if that's gone anywhere. For the record, I'm perfectly fine with it. But I just wondered if that conversation was cropping back up, or that there.
Yeah, we haven't had that necessarily raised at the staff level, and
Great.
in conversations with both executive directors, it's how they end up using the funds could be so different if
Yes.
one does a large, I don't know how to, like a physical improvement that can eat up those funds a lot faster than something different. So I think as we continue to have those conversations with the districts, it'll help refine the funding levels that we think is appropriate.
Sure. Well, and I just think that the bottom line right now, it makes sense to say we have 2 SMIDs and we're going to support them equally. So.
And I'd brought up that proportionality
Was that you?
concern, actually, yeah, at the council
I
meeting.
couldn't
so,
remember if
yeah.
it was you or if it was the mayor, so.
But yeah, I think it's getting fleshed
Yeah.
out.
I was just going to add to Rachel, and maybe that's where, because Caleb, I don't want to put too many names, but Caleb Wilson he has the Anchor-based space. He had recently shared with me some of the challenges on the back end of keeping that financially viable. So, Inca-based space is kind of experimental space, and there's a lot of risk taken on there, and so those kind of things may be a little different than what the downtown district has. And so I think, as Rachel said, the needs are different, but obviously still, very valuable to what the overall missions are, so.
Great. And then the only other thing we just wanted to touch on was the 21 South Lynn Street development, or the land that we recently purchased, just reminding you that those types of projects typically will come to the Economic Development Committee first. So you can anticipate sometime within the next year. We'll be meeting as a small group on that, and just kind of a high-level review in probably November, December of this year. We want to kick off discussions at the full city council level about the Chauncey and the RISE processes, and just have kind of a process discussion. Then late winter to early summer, we would ideally be engaging in public engagement, and again, having council review involved in that. And then next summer and next fall would kind of be that timeline of developing an RFP and determining what that RFP review process is going to look like. So that's just kind of a high level, but just know that typically the Council Economic Development Committee would look at those projects, and so it will be coming back to you.
Great. Thank you.
Staff updates.
Okay. Any old or new business? We did identify a couple agenda items, I think, to add for next time. Note those, but nothing else. All right. A motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right. We are adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.